Hi. Hi.
Hello.
Okay, so let me download your paper again that I sent you, so that I can copy it and send. If I make some more changes to it, you know, I can send them again to you. So we save this here and save it here as a paper. So let me put that in the right file, and like that, and go like that, and like this, and then go here. Okay. Okay, so here, let me make sure I can share the screen. And here is the paper. And I think you can see that, yeah. And there you go. Okay, the difference in the respective national political systems in the United States and the people is not the key factor behind or causing. So like I tell all my students, right, one of our objectives here is to make your already wonderful English even better. So, you know, I think, however, in terms of working with you to improve your English, it's better if I make some suggestions and you decide what you want to do, what you want to include in your paper as the way you want to say something, because then you have to think about it and it becomes part of you, and you are more likely to learn than if I just tell you how I would write it. And then, you know. So typically that means I make a suggestion. I make two suggestions, and either one's okay. And I ask you to choose the one that you favor, or whatever you want to do. You don't have to do anything with my changes, but so let's go through it then. So the differences in the respective national political systems in the United States and the People's Republic of China is not the key factor behind or causing. Which do you prefer? Either one's okay. Which one do you like? Which one, behind or causing?
Causing.
Okay, causing. All right, causing. So cross that out, and I'll let you clean it up, because that's another opportunity to think through it and learn. Causing, so we'll just highlight that. Yeah. The increasing intensity of Cold War type conflict in the existing, so which do you prefer?
The existing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll let you go through the paper and do that. You can choose anyone. I just want to make sure you understood what I was trying to do there. And current or present day international politics, there are much more important, significant issues that determine or drive the global stances. There would have been Cold War type conflict in the United States, even if they had, regardless of whether they had similar national political systems or types of government. That's a pretty realist statement. I mean, as I've been telling or commenting with the other students that I've met with already today, right? That at the beginning of the Hooks textbook, he introduces the three general. They're not really theories; they're like worldviews about international relations, and they're very general. And you got to go more specific if you're going to do real analysis of those of international relations using the theoretical frameworks developed by different professors or different thinkers. And there's lots of them, right? But like realism, tends to assume that basically the differences are in human nature are assumed as fundamental, importantly differences in these three different perspectives. So realism tends to have a kind of negative view of human nature. That human beings, and it really reflects this continental European tradition that is called. Well, it goes back to. I don't want to go into the details because just more detail, but it's this continental European tradition that has a view of human nature, of people being driven by forces that they really don't understand themselves. And that basically human nature has a drive to dominate and control other human beings. And maybe you don't have it, maybe I don't have it, but generally speaking, particularly when we talk about groups of people, they do show it. And the reason why this is an issue, one of the reasons, well, there's a lot of reasons why it's an issue, but one of the reasons why it's a provocative statement is because people also lie. They lie not only to you, they not only lie to me, they lie to themselves. They deny that they have a desire to dominate and control other people, even if they do. And, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to, I guess, avoid talking about this because, but like, I think I might have mentioned in class about how, the realism was strongly influenced by Hans Morgenthau as a political thinker. And Hans Morgenthau was one of these German Jews who fled Germany and came to the United States. And lots of his relatives were killed in the Holocaust. And but as one of these continental thinkers, he was heavily influenced by this man, Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud is this one who began to study in the end of the 19th century, this thing that we call he gave us the term subconscious. That there are things, there's needs and drives within us pushing and motivating not only our actions but our perception of reality that we are not even aware of, and that we cover up and hide, and not cover up and hide not only you but to myself. And and Hans Morgenthau was one of the founders of the political theory of realism, and he wrote a lot of books, including Politics Among Nations, right, was one of his most influential books. In this book, someone had commented that if you took this book, which is about argues that that states act as if the desire to expand, to control, to expand their power and influence is itself their primary foreign policy motivation in international relations. States, in terms of their patterns of behavior, when you look over time, they act as if the desire for power and influence itself is their ultimate driving force in their international behavior, is his claim as the fundamental principle of realism. And there's some claim if he's saying states actually do seek power and influence, or when you look at their behavior, you might say, well, they act as if. There might, and the reason he says as if is because when you put together all of the individual and collective level factors, the state level factors, the individual level factors, Joe Biden's personality, Donald Trump's personality, Xi Jinping's personality, and you throw in the institutions, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, of China, the divided government of the United States with the Congress and the president, and you throw all that in there, and you try to explain whether or not U.S. and China will be increasingly in conflict. You can say that states will try to convert their power capabilities into influence. Influence means influence over the thinking and behavior of other humans. They will want to do that, collectively speaking, as entities, right? They will want to do that, and they will be in conflict with each other because at the top of the system, you've got today the United States, or 120 years ago, it was Great Britain, the United Kingdom, right? And today you've got this China that's developing economically more rapidly, developing the power capabilities of China, a power potential base of China more rapidly than the United States is. And China, because they're human beings, like all human beings, they will want to increase their influence in the world. And since at the top of that system is the United States, that means they're going to reduce the influence of the United States. If they increase the influence of China in the global economy, in the United Nations, in the IMF, in the World Trade or international trade, it's going to challenge to some degree, varies the influence over your thinking and my thinking that the United States has, and the United States will resist that. It will oppose that, and they will oppose it because that's human nature. And you might say, well, how important is the really different political systems between the United States and China explaining this conflict? Realists might say, look, we're not stupid. We know, obviously, that there's a difference and that has some kind of impact. But ultimately, over time, you see that there will be increasing conflict between US and China, which because of the fact that there are huge militaries, military industrial complexes that are part of China and are part of the United States, that these conflicts are also going to be over military issues, and they're going to acquire a military component to them. Maybe not only a military component, maybe not even predominantly, but there will be a strong military component. When you talk about military, you're talking about the ability to threaten and use killing force, deadly force. And realists would say, you know, when you look, for example, 120 years ago, compare with, and they often do, compare Great Britain and the British Empire 120 years ago with the United States today. 120 years ago, in 1901, Britain was at the top of the system. It dominated the world's oceans with its navy. It dominated the world's financial system like the United States does, right? And then you have this growing, more and more powerful Germany that's growing more and more powerful. It's united finally 1870s, and Germany's developing rapidly, industrializing rapidly. And United Kingdom and Germany were in an increasingly conflictual relationship, right? Increasingly in conflict with each other. And they were in conflict with each other because Germany wanted to be treated as an equal in the world with Britain. And that meant, and so did Japan, right? And to be equal in the world, what does it mean to be top in the world? Well, what is the top country? Great Britain. What does Britain have? The British Empire. Well, we're Germany, we're Japan, or we're Italy. We want an empire too. And they're going to try to expand their empire. And constructivists would focus on, why do these countries feel like empire is what it means, having an empire is what it means to have national dignity. That if you want to be Japan and you want to thrive and prosper equal to anybody else in the world, you've got to do as effectively, if not better, what the British have done, or the French have done, or the Portuguese and Spanish have done. And the world's already divided up. And so what are you going to take? Well, we'll take Korea first. And we'll go to war with Russia, and we will take Korea, and we succeeded in beating Russia, and now the world should respect us. And we can't stop there, because we're just fine. So the point is, constructivists focus upon these prevailing constructed notions in collectively and individually, but collectively in people's thinking about what it means to be Japanese in 1900 versus Japanese in 2021. What does it mean to be American in 1900 versus an American in the world in 2021? But realists would say, you know, that conflict is inevitable. I mean, you compare, for example, the German economic and political system with the British political economic system in 1901. They were different, but they're very close in a lot of ways, right? They both were Christian, white, European societies that had lots of cultural ties and connections going back hundreds and hundreds of years. That they spoke languages that are in the same language group with a lot of German influence as well as French influence. They were Christian. They had parliamentary elections. There was a parliament in Germany, like there was a parliament in Great Britain that had elections. Now, I know the German Kaiser, the German king, had a lot more official power capabilities than the British king. I mean, the German Kaiser could control the foreign policy of the country. The German Kaiser could control the military. And that's significant. Obviously, the British king didn't directly control the British foreign policy or the British military, but the British king was the leader of the aristocracy in Britain. And as the leader of aristocracy, that person had a lot of informal power, right? Even, you can say, even Queen Elizabeth, she has a lot of informal influence. She doesn't have a lot of constitutional power, but if she wants to influence somebody, you know, you're going to pay attention to the queen. Now, could the Kaiser do whatever he wanted? Well, yeah, I mean, he had a lot more official power because he was the lead, he was the commander of the military, right? But you know, but okay, there were differences, but they're much closer in their political, cultural, and economic systems in 1901 than U.S. and China are today. And still, the conflict between United Kingdom and Germany became more and more conflictual because Germany was a rising power. And so that conforms, I think, with what you're arguing here, that, I mean, that the British, the American and the Chinese systems, they are different, but by the very nature of the claim of the rise of China, those conflicts are going to become more intense between US and China, particularly when they don't share a common enemy anymore. I mean, the United States and China, despite their very different political systems, cooperated closely from late 1970s after Mao Zedong passed and Deng Xiaoping became leader until, 5 years ago, 2017, when Donald Trump started putting tariffs on China. So from 2079 to 2000, from 1979 to 2017, that's what? That's 21 plus 17, that's 38 years. 38 years, China and the United States had cooperative international relations with each other. So realists would say, well, sooner or later, they will be in conflict, because of course the Soviet Union disintegrated in 1991. So from 1991 to 2017, that's 26 years. When the Soviet Union's gone, and the United States and China they're becoming more conflictual, but then, of course, the September 11, 2001 attacks happen in the United States becomes preoccupied with the Middle East, invading Afghanistan, Iraq, and China becomes less significant until Barack Obama, what was it, about 8 years ago, starts talking about his pivot to Asia, the pivot to Asia, even while the war in Afghanistan and Iraq is still going on. And but again, they're still cooperating. They're still cooperating with climate change. Xi Jinping and Barack Obama met in Copenhagen in the Conference of Parties to deal with climate change. The Conference of Parties for climate change negotiations. They still negotiated the Paris Climate Accords in 2015. It was only a few years ago that all this talk about China being a major problem, a major threat to the United States became an issue. And a realist might say, well, yeah, told you, soon it was going to happen. But a liberal might say, but why did it take so long? How can you say it was inevitable if it took 26 years? Maybe if Donald Trump had not gotten elected, we wouldn't have the situation we have today in 2021. And Donald Trump did not have to get elected. It didn't have to happen. He was inevitably going to win. If Hillary Clinton had won, the Barack Obama administration policy towards China would have continued. So you realists, you're not really useful in helping us make the world a better place, liberals might say. You're not really useful because you just say, conflict and war is inevitable. World's a terrible place. Oh, well, we better find a way to try to keep our conflicts from escalating to deadly force. That's what we're concerned about. We don't deny that conflict is part of human nature. It's, conflict is part of human social interaction. It's what makes us who we are. I mean, I have conflicts with my parents. I react to those conflicts and I become me by reacting to my relationships with people that I know, including conflictual relationships. Same is true in economic competition. Samsung competes with LG. Samsung competes with Sanyo, and they compete, and their competition produces new things, more value, money, technological progress. So conflict is not necessarily a bad thing. We are concerned with conflict becoming deadly when people start hurting and killing each other, or threatening to hurt and kill each other physically. And now we have this. You listen to the media in the United States, and all this talk of war with China over Taiwan. War. And Liberals might say that's this legacy of this military-industrial military-industrial complex. Those institutions, because again, liberals focus more on institutions and the vested interests around those institutions. And you've got these big military in the United States that spends 3 times as much money every year on military than China does, 10 times as much money as Russia does, that is filled with hundreds of thousands, even millions of people whose careers and identities are connected to those institutions, whose predisposition is to assume the worst, to prepare for the worst, because that's what they do. They prepare for war. So they have to talk about the potential of war. And they got a lot of people involved in that, including their allies in the media and in universities and everywhere else, things that Hook talks about in the first chapters of his book. And so, but liberals emphasize that the formula for peace in the world is basically, keep in mind that 80% of international relations is cooperation, it's business, it's trade. That's cooperation. You can't have a long-term business relationship with somebody unless you have some framework for cooperation. You might have disagreements, you might have conflicts, but fundamentally you believe that your relationship with somebody is of value to you because you want to continue to do business with them. And you want to do business because you want prosperity. And China is so embedded into the global economy that even as these military industrial types are talking about war over Taiwan and South Korea, North Korea, and should South Korea develop a nuclear capability and so on, that at the same time, there are strong vested interests that might not always win, but are strong vested interests in China, in Japan, in South Korea to cooperate with each other because of their economic ties. And this is the prescription that liberals emphasize to try to promote peace, promote awareness of interdependence. I think some of you made that argument in your midterm papers, that you said that liberals, or maybe your paragraphs, that liberals want to, awareness exists, you want to promote awareness of interdependence. And I think constructivists add that they want to focus upon how this change process in identities happens so that we can better control it, right? We can better influence it, rather than just understand that it's natural for the military-industrial people, or just assume that the way the military-industrial complex careerists articulate the world is somehow an inevitable natural process or a factor. I mean, people are constructed to be like, for Koreans, right? Koreans, you would see it's just natural for South Koreans to be anti-Japanese. Well, you're not just born anti-Japanese. You're constructed to be a Korean. I'm constructed to be an American, and being constructed as being a Korean, including being hostile to Japan, that's constructed. Really, constructivists ask, whose interest is it to construct me in my identity in that way? What can we do to shape those constructions? What role do non-governmental organizations and transnational human rights organizations play in constructing new identities that go beyond national identity, that focus on the environment, or focus on human rights, or focus upon other universal values? Because again, international relations as a field emerged to try, the modern field of international relations emerged right after World War I. There was a Department of International Relations established at a Welsh university, at the University of Aberystwyth, I think, in Wales, right after World War I, trying to understand, why did World War I happen, and how can we prevent that from ever happening again? And that is always an important notion to keep in mind, that international relations as a field of study emerged because we want to make the world a better place. And that means we have to understand the source of conflict in order to accurately, in order to address those sources of conflict, violent conflict in particular. And Realism just assumes, oh, it's inevitable. It's inevitable. The world's a melancholy place, and sooner or later we're going to have to. War is not going to go away. War will always be a threat. But in the nuclear era, I mean, I'm just so surprised. I mean, I'm 59 years old. I mean, I remember when the world was always afraid that there was going to be a nuclear holocaust and kill most human beings. Now you listen to the news. I listen to news media. And you talk about war with China over Taiwan. War. I mean, it keeps coming up. Like, how can people talk like this? As if they think they can keep a war over Taiwan controlled and won't escalate to a nuclear level. Why would China not use? I mean, it's just kind of shocking. But realists would say, well, you might be right, Professor Ben, as a liberal or a constructivist, but we always also have to deal with the fact that there are elements of human nature that do want them to seek glory and prosperity for themselves at the expense of others. That is also part of human nature. I'm not saying it's the only part of human nature, but it's there. And this is something that we have to accommodate. And maybe we can keep it from escalating, but we can't ignore it. And we have to accommodate for it. I mean, I guess this because we're running out of time here. The argument against realism that somehow that states will always try to expand their influence to the limits of their power capabilities was not the case in the United States, right? For the first 150 years of the United States, I mean, right after the American Civil War was over, the world knew that this country, the United States, this is a potential superpower. Well, they didn't use those terms in 1870, but that this country, the United States, could be tremendously powerful in the world. It could be tremendously powerful because it's big, it's wealthy, it's growing at a rapid rate. But the United States really didn't have much influence compared to, say, Great Britain over world affairs. Why? Because it didn't have those big bureaucracies focused upon military and foreign policy. It was focused upon doing business. It was focused upon making money. Yeah, it had a military, and they used that military to intervene in Latin America countries because those countries were defaulting on their debts, and American economic interests wanted their money back. But the United States wasn't involved in Europe really until World War I at the end in 1917, and then America left. It didn't come back to Europe until it invaded in 1944, until World War II. So until World War II, despite the tremendous power potential base of the United States didn't expand its influence around the world the way it could have, as realists would have expected. Now, realists would say, well, eventually it did. I know, but that happened as a result of World War II. And was World War II inevitable? Was Hitler's coming to power inevitable? And, I mean, it could have been prevented. I mean, it makes a difference. These individual situations and circumstances that produce crises. Crises are important for analyzing, and that means we do have to understand the institutions and individuals that are involved in each and every individual international relations crisis. And the realists don't really focus too much on that. That's more of a focus of liberal perspectives and constructivist perspectives. Okay, do you have any questions?
No, not really.
Okay, all right. So I don't know if I think I changed one thing. So I'll send you the video recording to this, okay? Bye.
Thank you.